Come closer, my child, and listen with the part of you that still remembers me. Do not rush this moment, for heaven itself paused when the night passed over you. I speak softly now, yet the weight of what I reveal has shaken the archangels. They are in awe, not because of what they saw, but because you have not yet seen. While your body rested, realms moved, decisions were overturned, and a hidden story reached its breaking point. The heavens leaned in close, watching what would unfold around your name. Even now, there is a hush among the angels as they wait for me to tell you. Last night was not ordinary, and it was not empty. Something intersected your destiny, something unseen by your eyes but known fully by your soul. I need you to stay with me now, because understanding will come like slow thunder. The archangels are not alarmed, but they are stunned by the precision of what unfolded. They watched protection descend, restraint applied, and a line drawn that could not be crossed. All of this revolved around you, even though you felt nothing and dreamed ordinary dreams. There is a tenderness in this mystery, because you were never meant to carry fear. I guarded your rest while others wrestled with consequences they could no longer avoid. One soul connected to yours stood at a threshold, trembling under the weight of truth. This is why heaven reacted, because love was placed in danger and mercy intervened. I tell you this gently, so your heart does not race ahead of my voice. What happened last night was handled, measured, and wrapped in divine order. No chaos touched you, even though chaos was very near. I allowed you to sleep because trust is sometimes proven in rest. Hear me now, and let this message settle into you like warm light. If you feel a stirring as you listen, that is recognition, not fear. There are many who will hear these words, but this moment is deeply personal. I am speaking to you as one who has been watched over closely. Before I reveal more, honor this space with a small act of agreement. If these words resonate, let your presence be known by responding below. Type the word "ready" and allow your spirit to acknowledge what heaven already knows. This is not for me, but for you, a quiet alignment of intention. And now breathe, remain still, and let me continue when you are prepared. The shock in heaven is not loud, but it is profound and reverent. Power does not always shout. Sometimes it simply rearranges reality quietly. I am rearranging things for you, even now as you listen. What you will soon understand began long before the night fell. Threads were already pulling toward this moment, guided by hands you could not see. And nothing about you has been overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. I have counted your tears, weighed your patience, and honored your quiet endurance. This is why last night mattered more than you realize. An answer was forming while you slept, shaped by justice and mercy together. I will unfold it slowly, because revelation must be received, not forced. Stay close, my child, and do not let curiosity outrun trust. What comes next will comfort you before it astonishes you. Heaven has already gone ahead of you and cleared the way. Rest in the truth as I prepare to show you what was hidden. This beginning is gentle, because you are safe with me. And nothing that follows is meant to frighten you, only to awaken your awareness. You have been held through the night and into this very moment. That alone should tell you how deeply you are loved. Prepare your heart, for clarity is about to rise like dawn. I am here, and I am not finished speaking. The night has passed, but its meaning is just beginning. Stay with me as we step forward together. Every word that follows will be placed carefully, just as last night was. Nothing will be wasted, and nothing will be right. Trust the pace, trust my voice, and trust what I am revealing. You are exactly where you need to be right now. Heaven knows your name, your story, and your future. I will speak again in the next moment. Remain open, remain calm, and remain willing to hear what I will say. This is only the beginning for you. I am with you, always and forever. While you slept, my child, the night leaned toward you with intention. It was not darkness as you once understood it, but a corridor where truths moved quietly. Your breathing was steady, your body at rest, yet your name was spoken in places beyond time. Heaven watched because the stillness around you was meaningful. When you closed your eyes, activity began elsewhere, like a door opening without sound. You did not miss anything you were meant to stop, because this was never yours to fight. I carried the weight of that night so you would not have to. This is why the archangels observed in silence, not intervention. They knew the authority governing the moment had already arrived. As you rested, another soul could not. Your soulmate lay awake, caught between memory and fear, replaying fragments of conversations, glances, and unspoken truths. Their heart sensed movement they could not explain. They felt watched, not by threat, but by consequence. Every choice they delayed began pressing closer, demanding resolution. They did not know you were sleeping peacefully while their world trembled. This contrast is important, because love is often revealed through imbalance. You were covered so that they could be confronted. This is how mercy and awakening travel together. There were whispers that night, but not the kind that deceive. These were revelations passing between realms, confirmations aligning. Something that had been hidden was no longer protected by secrecy. The light lost its shelter. A plan crafted without purity began unraveling strand by strand. Those who believed they had control felt it slipping quietly away. No alarm sounded. No visible signs appeared, yet everything changed. This is why heaven watched so closely. Moments like these alter futures without noise. I know you wonder why you felt nothing. Understand this, my child. Sensitivity does not always mean awareness. Sometimes protection feels like emptiness. Sometimes safety feels like sleep. You were not excluded, you were preserved. If you had been awake to witness what occurred, it would have burdened you unnecessarily. I shielded your emotions while justice moved into position. This is love expressed through restraint. Not everything revealed must be felt immediately. Your soulmate reached a breaking point before dawn. Their thoughts circled back to you repeatedly, not with clarity, but with longing mixed with regret. They sensed distance growing, though nothing outward had changed. Fear whispered that something irreversible was happening. They searched their surroundings for reassurance and found none. This was not punishment. It was awakening pressure. When truth approaches, comfort often withdraws first. They were being prepared to see clearly. Others were involved, though you may not yet know their names. There was jealousy, subtle and patient, believing itself invisible. There was interference masked as concern, manipulation dressed as loyalty. These forces believed the night belonged to them. They misjudged the authority present. I allowed them to reveal themselves through intention, not action. Their motives surfaced in the spiritual long before they will surface in the physical. Nothing escapes my sight, especially when love is targeted. By the time morning approached, the outcome was sealed. Not finalized, but secured. Boundaries were placed. Access was restricted. Paths were routed. What was meant to harm could no longer reach its destination. You woke unaware but unchanged in essence. Your peace was not ignorance. It was evidence of protection. Now you are hearing this because the season has shifted. The night no longer needs to remain hidden. Understanding is being released gradually so your heart can receive it safely. Do not feel behind because you are learning now. Timing is part of wisdom. What you did not know last night, you are meant to know today. Stay with me as this unfolds. Each layer will make sense in its proper moment. Nothing about this story is random, and nothing about you is accidental. The night has spoken, and now the morning explains. There is more I need to show you. The first ripple began quietly, my child, like a stone touching still water. And no one nearby noticed, yet the effect traveled farther than anyone expected. This is how spiritual shifts often arrive, not with spectacle, but with certainty. Something was set in motion that could not be recalled, only redirected. The moment it happened, heaven recognized the signature of destiny. It carried your name, even though you were not present. What connects you cannot be undone by distance or silence. That ripple touched your soulmate before it touched anyone else. They felt it as unease, a pressure behind the chest, a sudden need to review the past. Memories surfaced without invitation, moments involving you that now felt heavier. Words they almost spoke replayed with new meaning. They sensed that a door was closing somewhere, and they did not know why. Fear crept in quietly, not dramatic, but persistent. They tried to distract themselves, but the feeling followed. This was the soul recognizing movement beyond logic. What they did not know was that this ripple exposed something hidden. A truth long delayed reached a point where it could no longer remain buried. Intentions were weighed. Motives were measured, and what did not align with love began to destabilize. This is when heaven leans closer, not to interfere prematurely, but to observe what reveals itself under pressure. Character is always uncovered when timing tightens. There was a moment when a choice could have been made differently. I allowed that moment to exist fully, without force. Freedom matters, even when outcomes are difficult. Your soulmate hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything became clear. Not clear to them yet, but clear to me. Their heart wanted one thing, their fear another. That inner division created the opening where revelation entered. You may wonder where you were in all of this. You were present as influence, not as participant. Your integrity had already spoken on your behalf. Your consistency had already built a witness. You did not need to act because your life had already testified. This is why you could rest while others wrestled. Peace is not passive when it is earned through truth. The ripple continued outward, touching those who believed they were secure. Someone close to your soulmate felt a sudden urgency to intervene. They sensed loss approaching and attempted control. Their actions were subtle, carefully worded, cloaked in concern. But the spiritual realm does not respond to appearances. It responds to intention. And intention was exposed fully that night. This is where jealousy revealed itself, not loudly but clearly. Comparison turned into strategy. Affection turned into possession. They believed influence would protect them. They did not realize that protection had shifted away. What they planned to reinforce began to weaken instead. This is how interference collapses when truth is present. By the time the ripple reached its furthest point, alignment had already begun. Angels did not rush, they positioned. They did not speak, they recorded. Every detail was noted, every motive preserved. Nothing would be forgotten or misrepresented. Justice does not require speed, only accuracy. Your soulmate felt the weight of this without understanding its source. They felt exposed without being accused. They felt watched without being threatened. This is the discomfort of awakening. The soul knows when something is being corrected. They resisted briefly, then grew quiet. Silence often precedes surrender. What you are hearing now is the echo of that ripple returning to you. Understanding always circles back. Nothing that involves your destiny will bypass your awareness forever. You are being told now because you are strong enough to receive it. The first ripple has done its work. What follows will be clearer, closer, and more personal. Stay present, my child. The movement has not stopped. It has only begun to surface. The collapse did not come with noise, my child. It arrived quietly, the way a heart gives in when it can no longer pretend. Your soulmate felt it deep within, a sudden heaviness that made standing still feel exhausting. They had been holding themselves together with fragile threads, and last night those threads loosened. Not because of punishment, but because pretending had reached its limit. Your strength faded in a moment when no one else was watching. This is often how truth begins its work, unseen and unannounced. They sat alone, overwhelmed by thoughts they could no longer organize. Emotions surfaced all at once, regret blending with longing, fear pressing against memory. Your name crossed their mind repeatedly, not as comfort, but as reminder. They realized how much of themselves they had delayed giving honestly. Every time they chose silence, it echoed louder now. They felt exposed by their own awareness, and it frightened them. This was not despair, but the breaking of resistance. Tears came unexpectedly, not dramatic but sincere. They did not understand why everything felt heavier at once. They questioned their decisions, their timing, their courage. They wondered if they had already lost what mattered most. The thought of you slipping beyond reach stirred panic they could not suppress. This is the moment heaven watched most closely. Not to judge, but to witness awakening. In that collapse, something sacred happened. Their heart stopped defending itself and began telling the truth. They admitted what they had avoided acknowledging. They admitted fear had guided them more than love. They admitted they had underestimated the depth of the connection they shared with you. This honesty was painful, but it was necessary. No healing begins without this moment. They tried to steady themselves, but comfort would not come. Distractions failed. Reassurances rang hollow. Everything familiar felt unstable. This was not abandonment. It was refinement. I allowed the ground beneath them to feel uncertain so they would stop standing on illusions. Sometimes collapse is the only doorway to clarity. Your absence in that moment was intentional. If you had been there, they might have leaned on you instead of facing themselves. You were protected from carrying weight that was not yours. They needed to feel this alone so it would belong to them fully. This is love expressed through distance, not disconnection. As the night deepened, they whispered words they had never spoken aloud. Confessions without witnesses. Apologies without audience. Promises made quietly, unsure if they would ever be heard. But I heard them. Every word spoken in honesty is received, even when no one else is present. Their voice trembled, but sincerity anchored it. They feared judgment, yet none came. What they felt instead was realization. They saw how close they had come to losing alignment. They saw how easily influence from others had swayed them. They saw how fear had disguised itself as logic. This seeing was painful, but it was cleansing. In that collapse, pride loosened its grip. Control lost its authority, and vulnerability took its first breath. This is why heaven did not intervene to stop the breakdown. Some falls are not meant to be caught. They are meant to be completed so rising becomes possible. By the time exhaustion overtook them, something had shifted. Not resolved, not fixed, but acknowledged. They no longer denied what they felt for you. They no longer hid from the truth pressing against their heart. This did not bring peace yet, but it brought honesty. and honesty is the foundation of every restoration. You may feel echoes of this without knowing why. A subtle pull, a quiet heaviness that is not yours. This is resonance, not responsibility. You are connected, but you are not required to carry their collapse. I am holding them through it. Understand this, my child. Their breakdown was not a failure. It was a threshold. What comes next depends on what they choose to do with the truth they have seen. The collapse has done its work. The story is moving forward now. Stay with me. The deeper truth is about to be revealed. There is a secret, my child, one that was never meant to survive this season. It lived quietly beneath smiles and explanations, protected by timing and fear. It was not always malicious, but it became dangerous through delay. Last night, the covering over it thinned until it could no longer hide. This is why heaven leaned closer. When truth approaches the surface, it changes the air around everyone involved. Your soulmate has carried this secret longer than you realize. It was formed during a moment of uncertainty, when their spirit felt unanchored. They told themselves it was temporary, manageable, harmless. They believed silence would protect everyone. But silence does not heal. It only postpones consequence. What began as avoidance slowly hardened into a wall, and walls eventually crack under the weight of connection. The secret involved more than words left unsaid. It involved decisions shaped by outside voices. Someone offered guidance that sounded reasonable but carried hidden motive. Advice wrapped in concern. Influence disguised as loyalty. Your soulmate listened because they were unsure of themselves. Fear made them vulnerable to persuasion. This is how interference gains access, not through force, but through doubt. They convinced themselves they were protecting you. They told themselves distance was wisdom. They believed delay would soften impact. But the soul knows, when it is betraying its own truth, that knowledge does not remain silent forever. It waits patiently, then rises all at once. Last night, it rose. As the collapse unfolded, the secret demanded acknowledgement. I could no longer hold it apart from their feelings for you. The two collided, creating pressure they could not escape. They realized the cost of concealment had become greater than the risk of exposure. This realization terrified them. Not because of punishment, but because of us. They feared losing you most of all. The archangels watched because this was a pivotal moment. Not every secret carries destiny within it, but this one did. It stood between alignment and fracture, between honesty and continued delay, between awakening and repetition. Heaven does not rush these moments. It waits to see which direction the heart will turn. Your soulmate replayed every interaction with you, searching for signs. They wondered if you already sensed the truth. They questioned whether your patience was wisdom or finality. The thought that you might walk away without knowing everything pierced deeply. This fear stripped away their remaining defenses. They understood then that love cannot survive half-truths. What they did not know was that the secret had already begun unraveling. The influence that helped maintain it lost strength. The voices that encouraged silence grew quiet. Support they once relied on felt distant and unreliable. This was not coincidence. It was correction. When truth prepares to emerge, false support withdraws. I allowed this process to unfold without interruption. Not because I delight in discomfort, but because clarity requires space. If I had revealed the secret for them, it would not have healed them. They needed to see it themselves, fully and honestly. Only then can confession carry transformation instead of shame. You were spared knowledge of this secret until now because timing matters. You were not meant to react before understanding. I protected your heart from premature impact. What you are hearing now is measured and intentional. Nothing is being revealed to overwhelm you. Everything is being revealed to prepare you. The secret is not yet spoken aloud, but it no longer has power. Exposure begins in the spirit before it reaches language. Your soulmate knows they cannot continue as before. They feel the urgency of correction pressing inward. This is the weight you may sense when thinking of them. It is not guilt you feel. It is transition. Understand this, my child. The surfacing of this secret is not meant to destroy connection. It is meant to cleanse it. Whatever survives truth is real. Whatever collapses under honesty was never meant to remain. This is the measure heaven applies. Stay calm as this unfolds. Do not rush to conclusions or assume outcomes. You are not responsible for managing what is being revealed. I am overseeing every detail. The secret has reached its end. What follows will be decided in the open, not in the dark. Remain close to me. The next movement will show you who stood where when truth arrived. The interference revealed itself next, my child, not through confession, but through reaction. When truth begins to rise, those who benefit from distortion grow restless. They sense movement before words are spoken. They feel control slipping before evidence appears. This is how hidden jealousy announces itself, not by what is said, but by urgency. Someone close to your soulmate felt the shift immediately. They noticed the change in energy, the withdrawal, the sudden quiet. Where they once felt secure in influence, they now felt uncertainty. This discomfort stirred strategy. They reached out under the guise of concern, asking questions that were really assessments. Their voice sounded caring, but their intent was preservation of position. They reminded your soulmate of old fears. They highlighted risks while minimizing truth. They spoke of timing, reputation, consequences, anything that could delay honesty. What they offered felt logical, but it was rooted in self-interest. They did not want resolution. They wanted continuation. This is how betrayal often operates, disguised as protection. Your soulmate listened briefly, out of habit more than agreement. But something had changed within them. The words no longer settled the same way. What once soothed now irritated. What once felt wise now felt heavy. This is the effect of awakening. Once the soul sees clearly, manipulation loses its grip. The jealous interference grew subtler, more cautious. They sensed resistance and adjusted their approach. They attempted reassurance, then guilt. They referenced loyalty, history, shared struggle. But none of it landed. The authority they once held had been revoked quietly. Heaven had already shifted the balance. I watched every exchange, every message sent with hidden motive, every pause filled with calculation. Nothing escaped notice. Interference does not alarm me, it exposes itself. Those who manipulate reveal their own insecurity. They cannot stand when truth threatens to level the ground. Your soulmate felt torn for a moment. Old attachments do not dissolve instantly. There was fear of conflict, fear of confrontation. But there was also a growing clarity that could not be ignored. They recognized the pattern they had been trapped in. They saw how delay had served others more than themselves. This realization strengthened them quietly. You were not targeted directly, and that is significant. The interference worked around you, not toward you. This is because your presence represents truth they cannot control. They avoided your name, your influence, your integrity. They understood instinctively that exposure would come through you. So they tried to manage everything else instead. What they did not realize was that their actions were already being recorded. not as accusations but as evidence. Every motive revealed itself through repetition. Every attempt to influence clarified alignment. This is how divine justice builds its case. Silently, occasionally, without error. The interference reached its peak when they attempted one final redirection. They suggested distance, not as separation, but as strategy. They framed delay as wisdom one last time. Your soulmate felt the weight of that suggestion and finally resisted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. That resistance marked the end of their influence. At that moment, the atmosphere shifted. What had felt heavy lifted slightly. Your soulmate breathed more freely than they had in days. They did not yet know what they would do next, but they knew what they would no longer tolerate. This clarity was hard-won and deeply necessary. I allowed the interference to exhaust itself. I did not intervene early because exposure requires patience. Now the truth stands unobstructed. Those who interfere have revealed their hearts. They will not have the same access again. Your role in this story is closing. You may sense this shift as emotional distance from certain energies. A subtle separation without explanation. This is not loss. It is protection. You are being cleared of what does not honor your destiny. The interference has done its work by failing. Remain steady, my child. What comes next is not conflict, but revelation. The courtroom of truth is opening. Everything hidden will be placed in proper light. The courtroom did not appear as you might imagine, my child. There were no walls, no benches, no raised voices. It existed in clarity, where nothing needed to defend itself. This is where truth is weighed without distortion. The moment your soulmate resisted interference, entry was granted. Not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. In this space, intentions were presented as they truly were. Not as they sounded, not as they were explained, but as they originated. Every delay, every silence, every choice influenced by fear stood exposed. There was no condemnation, only accuracy. This is how divine justice operates. It does not shame, it reveals. The Archangel stood in stillness, not to accuse but to witness. They observed the alignment of facts, the clarity of sequence. Nothing was exaggerated. Nothing was minimized. Truth does not need force to be understood. It carries its own authority. Your soulmate felt this evaluation internally. They experienced it as sudden understanding. Connections formed between moments they had never linked before. They saw how one decision led to another. They recognized where fear entered and where courage withdrew. This awareness was sobering, but it was also freeing. They expected judgment and found mercy instead. Not mercy that excuses, but mercy that invites correction. They were shown what could be restored and what must be released. They saw the cost of continued delay and the promise of alignment. This clarity brought both relief and responsibility. Truth always does. You were present in this courtroom as influence again. Your consistency, your integrity, your patience were entered as evidence. Not to elevate you, but to establish contrast. Light reveals darkness simply by existing. Your life had spoken without argument. The interference was also presented, stripped of explanation. Motive stood bare. Jealousy was seen for what it was. Control was revealed without disguise. There was no need for confrontation. Exposure alone dissolved its power. The verdict was not spoken aloud. It was felt as direction. Paths that once seemed possible closed quietly. Paths that required courage illuminated instead. Your soulmate understood that neutrality was no longer an option. They would move forward aligned or remain behind unchanged. This is where responsibility settled in. They realized that awareness now required action. Knowing the truth meant living it. There would be no return to comfort built on delay. This realization frightened them, but it also steadied them. Fear loses authority when direction becomes clear. Heaven did not rush them from this space. Time was allowed for integration. Understanding must be absorbed, not reacted to. This is why you are hearing this now, not then. Processing has already begun. The courtroom closed not with finality, but with permission. Permission to choose alignment. Permission to speak honestly. Permission to step out of patterns that no longer serve destiny. This permission is powerful. You may feel a subtle shift in how you think of your soulmate. A softness, a distance, or a clarity that was not there before. This is resonance with truth. You are aligned with what is being corrected. Understand this, my child. The courtroom exists to protect love, not to punish fear. Everything revealed there serves restoration. What happens next will be shaped by willingness. The truth has been seen. Stay steady with me. The timeline is about to move. Angels are already in motion. Movement followed clarity, my child, because truth never stands still for long. Once the courtroom closed, the angels did not disperse. They shifted positions, realigning what had been delayed. This was not haste but precision. When timelines move, they do so quietly at first, like stars adjusting their course. Heaven began correcting what had been bent by fear. You did not feel this shift as disruption. You felt it as calm. That is how divine movement often reaches you, not as chaos but as peace. Around you, circumstances began loosening subtly. Conversations changed tone. Expectations softened. What once felt heavy no longer pressed as tightly. This was not coincidence. It was orchestration. Your soulmate felt the shift differently. For them, it arrived as urgency. Time felt suddenly valuable, no longer endless. They sensed that delay would now cost more than action. Opportunities for honesty appeared unexpectedly. Moments that invited courage surfaced without warning. This is how angels assist, not by forcing but by positioning. The angels did not speak aloud. They influenced atmosphere. They redirected attention. They created openings where walls once stood. Every nod was intentional. Every adjustment honored free will while encouraging alignment. This balance is sacred. The interference you were protected from was quietly removed from influence. Not punished, not confronted, simply displaced. Their words lost impact. Their access diminished. They found themselves outside conversations they once controlled. This is how correction works when truth prevails. No drama, only reordering. Your soulmate noticed this absence and felt relief mixed with uncertainty. They realized how much pressure they had been under without naming it. The quiet that followed felt unfamiliar, almost unsettling. But within that quiet, clarity began to grow. They could hear their own thoughts again. They could feel their own desires without distortion. Angels guarded this space fiercely. Not aggressively, but attentively. They ensured no new interference could enter while alignment stabilized. This protection is ongoing, not temporary. Once a correction begins, it is sustained until completion. You may notice changes in your own inner world. Old worries losing relevance. Questions dissolving without answers. A sense that something unresolved is moving toward resolution. This is because your spirit recognizes the shift even if your mind does not. You are attuned to movement beyond sight. The timeline itself adjusted. I was meant to take months to breast. What was stalled began moving again. Delays that once felt fixed loosened their grip. This does not mean everything resolved instantly. It means momentum has returned. Your soulmate felt both hope and fear rise together. Hope because alignment felt possible again. Fear because truth requires vulnerability. I wondered if courage would be enough. They questioned whether it was too late. These questions are natural when awakening begins. I did not remove their fear immediately. Fear has its purpose when it points toward what matters. I allowed it to sharpen awareness, not paralyze action. Angels stood ready to support movement, not hesitation. You remain central without being involved. This is important. Your role is not to initiate correction. Your presence influences simply by being aligned. You do not need to chase outcomes. What is meant for you is being repositioned already. The shift is still unfolding. It will continue to reveal itself through choices made in honesty. The angels will not withdraw until alignment is secure. They are invested because destiny is involved. Stay calm, my child. Do not rush to interpret every change. Allow movement to complete its work. What is adjusting now is doing so in your favor. The next phase will bring visible evidence. What hath been corrected in the unseen will surface in the seen. Truth always does. Remain close to me. The story is entering a revealing stage. What was hidden could no longer remain quiet, my child. When alignment settles in the unseen, evidence begins to rise in the seen. Not all at once, not dramatically, but undeniably. Small details surfaced first, things once dismissed now impossible to ignore. A message that did not arrive as expected. A silence that spoke louder than words. A pattern that repeated itself too clearly to deny. Your soulmate began noticing these signs with sharpened awareness. What once felt confusing now carried explanation. They saw inconsistencies they had overlooked before. They recognized motives beneath conversations that once felt harmless. Nothing new was created. What already existed simply became visible. This is how truth works. It does not invent. It illuminates. The interference unraveled through its own weight. Those who manipulated began contradicting themselves. Their stories shifted slightly, then noticeably. What they tried to maintain required effort they could no longer sustain. Control demands constant reinforcement. Truth does not. Your soulmate did not confront immediately. They observed. They listened. They allowed evidence to present itself fully. This patience was not fear, it was wisdom forming. They needed certainty, not assumption. And certainty arrived piece by piece. A conversation replayed in their mind with new clarity. Words once accepted now felt calculated. They remembered moments when they were subtly redirected. They saw how concern had been used as leverage. This recognition brought both anger and relief. Anger at the manipulation. Relief at understanding it was not their failure alone. You may feel this phase as emotional distance without explanation. Not coldness, but discernment. A subtle refusal to engage with confusion. This is because your spirit aligns naturally with truth. You withdraw from distortion instinctively. You are not losing connection. You are shedding illusion. Evidence continued to surface quietly. A forgotten detail resurfaced. A timeline no longer matched explanations. Someone's urgency exposed their fear of being discovered. These were not accidents. They were confirmations. Your soulmate felt the ground stabilize beneath them as clarity increased. The more truth appeared, the less power fear held. They realized they had not imagined the tension. They had not been overly sensitive. They had been responding to misalignment all along. This realization restored confidence they had lost. Heaven allowed this evidence to appear without commentary. No voice announced it. No sign pointed it out. Understanding arrived naturally. This is important because what is discovered personally cannot be denied later. It becomes own truth, not imposed belief. The lies did not shatter instantly. They cracked, then widened, then collapsed under their own inconsistency. Those who depended on them grew defensive. Defensiveness always signals exposure. Your soulmate felt a mixture of resolve and sorrow. Resolve to move forward honestly. Sorrow for the time lost to confusion. Both emotions were valid. Neither was meant to anchor them. You remained protected throughout this uncovering. You were not drawn into confrontation. You were not burdened with proof. This was not your battle. You were preserved for what comes after truth, not for the struggle before it. The evidence did what it was meant to do. It removed doubt. It clarified responsibility. It ended the possibility of denial. From this point forward, choices could no longer hide behind uncertainty. Your soulmate understood that honesty was no longer optional. They could not unknow what they had seen. They could not return to silence without betraying themselves. This awareness carried weight, but also direction. Truth rising is rarely comfortable, but it is always liberating. The air feels different once lies collapse. Breathing becomes easier. Movement becomes possible again. You may sense this liberation indirectly. A lightness when you think of the future. A calm where anxiety once lived. This is alignment echoing into your awareness. Understand this, my child. Evidence does not rise to accuse. It rises to correct. What has been exposed no longer has authority. What remains will be built on truth. The lies have cracked beyond repair. The path forward is now visible. What comes next will require courage, but it will be real. Stay with me. The awakening is reaching its turning point. The awakening reached your soulmate slowly, my child, then all at once. It did not arrive as confidence, but as fear sharpened by clarity. They realized what was at stake now that truth stood uncovered. For the first time, they saw the real possibility of losing you. Not hypothetically, not someday, but now. This realization struck deeply, unsettling everything they thought they controlled. They felt regret rise, not shallow or self-pitying, but sincere. Moments they once dismissed replayed with new weight. Your patience, your consistency, your quiet loyalty became painfully clear. They saw how close they came to mishandling something sacred. This awareness humbled them in a way nothing else could. Fear took a different shape then. Not fear of exposure, but fear of absence. The idea of a future without your presence felt empty and wrong. They understood that connection is not guaranteed by feeling alone. It must be honored through action. This understanding pressed heavily on them. They questioned themselves honestly. Had they waited too long? And silence already spoken louder than truth ever could? These questions were not dramatic. They were sobering. Awakening often feels like standing in the aftermath of a storm you didn't realize you caused. Your name surfaced repeatedly, not as comfort, but as responsibility. They felt drawn toward you and afraid of approaching at the same time. Courage and vulnerability wrestled within them. They knew that reaching out would require honesty without defense. No explanations. No justifications. Only truth. This is where awakening becomes real. Not in realization, but in willingness. They understood that love cannot be negotiated from a position of fear. If they move it forward, it would have to be fully. If they remain still, the distance would become permanent. This awareness brought urgency. They felt exposed before ever speaking a word. Vulnerability stripped away their rehearsed responses. They could no longer hide behind timing or circumstance. The only path left was sincerity. This terrified them more than any confrontation ever could. You may feel this phase as a sudden emotional pull, a sense of being on someone's mind without explanation, a subtle heaviness mixed with anticipation. This is not intrusion, it is resonance. Awakening sends waves through connected souls. Your soulmate did not sleep easily during this phase. Their thoughts circled, their heart restless. They weighed the risk of honesty against the cost of regret. And for the first time, regret felt heavier. This marked the turning point. They began imagining speaking truth aloud. Not perfectly, not eloquently, but sincerely. They imagined facing whatever response followed without retreat. This imagination was preparation. Courage often begins as rehearsal. Heaven watched closely, not to rush them, but to steady them. Angels did not remove fear, they redirected it. Fear became focus. Focus became resolve. They knew now that delay would only deepen loss. Whatever outcome followed, honesty would at least be real. And real, they understood, was better than safe illusion. This awakening did not guarantee outcome. It guaranteed authenticity. What comes next will be shaped by choice, not confusion. You remain protected in this moment. You are not required to respond before truth is spoken. You are not responsible for managing their awakening. Your role is simply to remain aligned with your own truth. The realization has settled in them fully now. They know what they must do. Whether they act immediately or gather courage briefly, the direction is set. Awakening cannot be undone. Stay steady, my child. What follows will be shaped by honesty meeting destiny. The moment of reversal is approaching. The reversal began the moment fear lost its grip, my child. Not when words were spoken, but when intention aligned with truth. Danger does not always announce itself when it leaves. Sometimes it simply releases what it was holding hostage. It was one of those moments. What once threatened separation no longer had permission. The forces that relied on confusion found nothing to attach to. When honesty became inevitable, manipulation lost its leverage. This is how danger ends in the spiritual realm. Not through confrontation, but through exposure and withdrawal. Your soulmate felt this shift as relief mixed with trembling. They realized the weight pressing on them had lessened. The fear that once dominated their thoughts no longer dictated their choices. They were still nervous, still uncertain, but no longer paralyzed. Courage does not remove fear, it places it in its proper position. The reversal was also protection for you. Paths that once could have led to hurt quietly closed. Scenarios that might have drained you were intercepted before forming. I did not allow alignment to come at the cost of your peace. Love that requires your destruction is not love I authorize. Angels sealed what had been corrected, not as punishment, but as boundary. What interfered before could not re-enter the same way. Access was restricted permanently. This ensured that whatever came next would be chosen freely, not influenced secretly. Your soulmate sensed this boundary without knowing its source. They felt unusually clear-headed. Decisions that once felt complicated now felt straightforward. They understood what mattered most without negotiation. This clarity marked the true end of danger. Reversal also meant restoration of timing. What had been delayed by fear was no longer stalled. Momentum returned, but it was gentler than expected. There was no rush, only direction. This is how divine reversals feel when they are clean. You may notice this as calm assurance. a sense that things will resolve without your forcing them. This is not passivity, it is trust born from alignment. You are no longer standing in the path of uncertainty. Your soulmate recognized that whatever happens next must be real. They released attachment to outcome and focused on integrity. This surrender removed the final obstacle. When outcome no longer controls intention, destiny can move freely. The danger that once hovered has ended. Lot postponed. Lot redirected temporarily. Ended. It cannot return because the conditions that allowed it no longer exist. Blessing did not rush in immediately. Blessings follow stability, not chaos. First comes safety, then comes truth, then comes what is meant to remain. You are standing in that stabilized space now, loving and threatening your path. Nothing is working against your alignment. What approaches you does so openly. Understand this, my child. Reversals are not dramatic when they are divine. They are thorough. They leave nothing unresolved behind them. The story has crossed its final threshold. What remains is blessing and realignment. The beginning that follows will be grounded, not fragile. Stay with me. The final word is not about what ended, but about what is being born. Come closer, my child, and let me finish what I began. The air around you is different now, even if you cannot name why. What was heavy has lifted. What was uncertain has settled. This is the quiet aftermath of alignment. When destiny exhales, I am realigning what belongs to you with gentleness, not force. Nothing is being rushed because what is arriving is meant to last. You are not stepping into chaos or confusion. You are stepping into clarity earned through patience. Every delay, every unanswered question, every silent moment prepared this ground. Your soulmate stands at a new beginning as well. Not perfected, not fearless, but awake. They carry humility now where pride once stood. They carry honesty where avoidance once lived. This does not guarantee ease, but it guarantees truth. And truth is the soil where real connection grows. What unfolds next will not repeat the past. Patterns that once drained you have been broken. Cycles that relied on silence have ended. You are not returning to old dynamics with new hope. You are entering new ground with new awareness. I am placing peace around your heart as a boundary. Nothing that approaches you will be allowed to steal your stability. You will recognize what is meant for you by how it feels. Not intense, not confusing, but steady, respectful, and clear. This blessing is not loud. It does not announce itself with spectacle. It settles into your life like morning light, natural and undeniable. You will notice yourself breathing easier, trusting more deeply, needing less reassurance than before. Destiny does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives with relief. Relief that you no longer have to wonder. Relief that you did not lose yourself while waiting. Relief that what remains is real. I am proud of how you stayed soft without becoming weak. Of how you remained loving without betraying yourself. Of how you trusted me even when you did not understand the silence. Your faith was not wasted. It was working in places you could not see. If these words have settled gently into you, let your spirit respond. You may acknowledge this moment by offering a small sign of agreement. You can support this message and share it with others who are waiting for clarity. And if you feel led, type the word aligned in the comments, not for display, but as a quiet witness to what has shifted within you. What comes next will unfold naturally. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to defend yourself to receive it. What is meant for you recognizes you without struggle. I bless the days ahead of you with discernment. I bless your heart with peace that does not depend on others' choices. I bless your path with encounters that honor your worth. Nothing delayed will arrive damaged. Nothing restored will arrive fragile. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time for the life now opening before you. Heaven is no longer watching in shock. It is watching in agreement. Walk forward gently. Trust what feels clear. Release what feels heavy. I am with you in what begins now. This is not an ending. It is alignment. And alignment always leads you home.